then Georgie, Renjin Songju, Senji Sa, Senji Tangi, Songju, Senjaba Sala, Songju Jaba, Lapin, Paros and Lasolas, Atombo Songju, Senji Sane, and Songju Senji Jaba.
We then continue in the words of our teacher with these two sentences in which he says, "From the bottom of your heart give rise to the precious enlightened attitude of Bodhicitta and to the 6 virtues, or the six types of virtues which allow you to proceed towards the goal." So before we start out with anything, Bodhicitta, the enlightened attitude, that wish to practice not only for our own sakes but for the sake and welfare of all others as well, has to be born within ourselves, has to be given rise to from the bottom of our heart. And that which then eventually allows us to reach that goal, to traverse that path that leads to such welfare for others, that is which we know as the 6 virtues, or the 6 types of deeds, the 6 kinds of activity. It is said that also the Buddha whom we know as our Buddha, the Buddha of our age, the Buddha Shakyamuni, originally gave rise to this enlightened attitude, to this bodhicitta. Numerous or innumerous eons ago, he found himself in the presence of the then Buddha who was known as Shakyamuni. And in the presence of this Buddha, he vowed, he made the great promise, the great aspiration to bring about lasting and efficient benefit and welfare for beings. That was the moment, one could say, in which perfect bodhicitta, the enlightened attitude, was born within him who was to become the Buddha of our age. And then it is said furthermore that during 3 immeasurable eons, he practiced all the various deeds, all the various activities of bodhisattvas, which then eventually led to his achievement, to his of Buddhahood for the sake of beings. Among all the various activities of bodhisattvas, the foremost ones are certainly the ones which are known as the 6 transcendent virtues. And from among these 6 transcendent virtues, the very first one is the virtue of generosity, the ability to freely give to others. It is said by the great Indian master Chandrakirti in a verse, which I can translate only very roughly, that all beings wish welfare, wish happiness and welfare, yet without possessions or without prosperity, they are not content. Therefore, the root of such contentment or the root of prosperity is taught to be the activity of generosity. This basically describes the basic situation in which, for the most part, all beings find themselves. Apparently, at least for the time being, happiness, welfare, well-being seems to be coupled very much with the possession of all sorts of things, with the possession of at least a certain amount of prosperity or affluence. Now, if one should wish to be prosperous or affluent in any which way, then it is taught very clearly that the cause of being so, the cause of coming into the possession of whatever one needs to live and whatever one needs to at least experience certain enjoyments, is that of generosity. Giving to others freely becomes the direct cause for our own experiencing prosperity and affluence in our lifetimes. It is said that the great bodhisattvas of the past trained themselves in generosity, even in such a way that they were able to give away their very bodies. Now, needless to say that we are utterly unable to do so. We are unable to do so because we still find ourselves under the influence of strong ego clinging, and therefore we just cannot act in such a vast way. However, we could start out to learn how to practice generosity also in small ways. Whatever small possession, whatever piece of our possession we are willing and able to give away, we could give it away to others who are in need of such a thing, who are needy in the first place of whatever it is that they might require. And in this way we could accustom ourselves to the practice, to the activity of generosity, and then eventually give away things for the sake of others and derive great benefit thereof.
Namo Buddha Then possum de Tangaso Tani, then Chom Drawing, not Gesella, Chom Drawing, then Coronzo, not Geseni, Yambola Sundu, Cap Jela, Troy Chala, Dharma, then Mugi Shedro, then Zubotan and Gimodopa, Mugi Shedro. Then Javanito Chembo, then Mingi Chembo Gine. Tandi Mao some the Shenro, Mugi Shenro. The Samate Yahu de Candide. Put Gembaniga, that dog don't Jenzinga, Samate Yahu, that shot on trod on that love. Ya, that Maranga Lupote, that they let them but on Guru. Zupan go town, Mapa Shendro. Atari, Jambatona, Daniel by younger song. When it goes on my song, ma song, then Shankanas, Javan, put touching in Calemandro, made that I heart in Ro, Dharma, Matanati, make it I heart, Tenga, my love. Oh, Yazi, Kunima, manifestation. Then Javan into Jim, Coron Yas, Cosi Tanti Pa, Pig, then it was Shank and Key. Then a Dharma, Naga, Jada and Coroma, Rini, then the shot is that. Then he said, then Yabu, Sato, your money, and so Jep told me. Then Koron Yalon Pana Shing Chama Shing, then Roma Mava, then Shing Combo, then he Mata, then he called Gil and the Tidu, then he chop for you. Then he taught them, but then he dark colored, then he dark combo chop, then he did his own bush, then he can remember then he says someone. And then he orders, and Songi Yaru to Jambuja and because then he didn't go to Japan.
There's a story about how the Buddha, in the previous lifetime, before he became the Buddha, practiced the very greatest generosity by way of even offering his own body. This story occurred in the country that is nowadays known in Nepal, as Nepal. And the Buddha was born as the youngest of 3 sons of the king of a particular area. And these 3 sons, these 3 princes, the youngest of which was the future Buddha, went for a walk in the woods. And as they came upon a certain spot, they came upon a tigress who had just given birth to 3 or 4 tiger cubs, and she was so weak and sick that she could not hunt. She could not feed the cubs, she could not feed herself, and the tigers were in imminent danger of dying. Beholding that scene, he became filled with compassion, and he asked his older brothers, what can we do to help? What do tigers eat? Apparently these tigers are in need of food, so what can we offer them? And the brothers told him, well, tigers for the most part prefer meat and blood, the flesh of other beings. That is what they like, this is what gives them strength. The young prince, who incidentally was known by the name of Great Courage, he then said to his, he contemplated that scene, and he thought to himself, well, for countless times I have been born again and again, I've had many bodies, they have all died, and also this one is going to die eventually. So for once now I can use this opportunity to do something useful with this body of mine. And he told his brothers, well, why don't you two walk on, I'll join you shortly. And the 2 brothers agreed, and they walked on, and the youngest brother, the prince, Great Courage, remained behind. And he then made that resolve to offer his own body to the tigress so that she could survive, that she could feed her cubs, and that these animals would not have to die. He was full of compassion. He undressed and he placed himself in front of the tigress, who, however, was so weakened that she could not eat him, she could not kill him. Then he was full of even more compassion, and he got up again, he broke off a dry branch of a tree, the pointed tip of which he then used to cut open his veins so that a great deal of blood started to flow. And he placed himself again in front of the tigress and allowed her to first lick his blood. After she had done so, she gained some strength and could then eventually kill and eat his body and feed it to her young. In this way, he practiced the very greatest, the ultimate generosity that one could imagine, the generosity of his own body for the sake of the welfare of other beings.
then send the Dongbani Dotadu, Marang Lula, Nasa, Donga Lasso by Yoma. Then Maron Jimba Dongatella, then Jepata, Senna Lasso, then the Yoma. Tella then hours to some Bachimbo, no Jimba and the Tango. Maron Zong, 10 hours Jimba to my. Then Maron so soon for Cheshon Khan, Yobati Jimbatona, Tem Jimbari.
I forgot to mention before that the spot where the Buddha in his previous lifetime offered himself to the tigers is the famous pilgrimage place of Namo Buddha nowadays, which is not very far from Kathmandu and a popular pilgrimage site. Now, to practice generosity in such a way indeed is the province of only the greatest of bodhisattvas. we ourselves are utterly unable to do so. There are many other stories, how bodhisattvas gave away their eyes, how they gave away their limbs, or whatever was necessary and appropriate at any given time to help others who were in need. Now, it is important to understand why they are able to practice such great generosity in such a way. They are able to do so because they recognize appearances and phenomena, which of course includes their own bodies, as being empty of any substance, devoid of any self-nature in the first place. That being the case, there is also no pain or anything of that sort incurred as they give away parts of their bodies. There being no pain, there's also no regret in the end, that they could possibly think, oh, now I've given away an eye, I better should have not done so. Such ideas, such considerations do not occur in the first place, simply because bodhisattvas who have achieved such a high level that enables them to act generosity out in such a way, perceive the entire world of phenomena and appearances, including their own bodies, etc., as being entirely empty of any inherent self-nature at all. We ourselves, on the other hand, have not really realized that fundamental state of the world that surrounds us, as well as our own bodies, as our own minds. We still seem to hold on to this idea of a self that is cherished, that is protected and defended at every which way. Therefore, we are not able to practice generosity in such a great, in such an overwhelming way. However, we should accustom ourselves to the activity of generosity nevertheless. And while we're unable to give away our bodies, let alone even small parts of our bodies, at least we should be able, or we should accustom ourselves to give away small things which might find themselves in our possession in order to bring about, in order to help others, in order to alleviate pain or poverty or need of whatever type. Generally speaking, the Buddha has taught 4 different types of generosity, of which the first is, of course, the one of giving away of possessions, and that is also what the Buddha has mentioned. So these 4 types are the generosity in regard to possessions, generosity in regard to the Dharma, then the giving away or the granting of fearlessness, and generosity in regard to loving kindness and compassion. Among these first, we have so far heard about the first type of generosity, which is that of the being generous with possessions, with material objects of whatever type. With all of that generosity, it also makes a great deal of sense to first make sure towards whom we practice our generosity, and also to make sure that we do so in an appropriate way, that we give things which are required, that we give things which are useful to the one we're giving to. For instance, if we were to encounter a person that is on the brink of dying from starvation, of course to such a person we would give food, needless to say. Or if we find someone who is greatly suffering from thirst, then of course we would give these people something to drink. And then Rinpoche goes into detail. We should also make sure what it is that these people prefer to drink. If someone, like myself, prefers a good cup of coffee, then of course that is what you, if you should practice, want to practice generosity towards me, that is what you could really make me happy with. No sugar please, just milk. Or if you meet someone else who is an avid tea drinker, well, that person would of course be greatly gladdened by a really good cup of tea. Or as Rinpoche says of himself, if you would wish to offer some drink to Rinpoche, he drinks nothing but hot water, so hot water is really what gladdens Rinpoche's heart. So in this way, it makes sense to first check what is it that is required, and if it is within our possibility, then that is exactly what we should offer.
그래서 그 자는 견주매와 저는 정확하게 동을 전부요와 된다고 매실래나 다 제가 사마 짐바당고 말에 저는 통조 철라서 짐바당고 말에 코로나 동을 정확하게 동을 열어와 된다고 공사다 나랑 그러고지 야나 가야나 된다고 코로 정확하게 동을 좁게 무엇이 짐바당타나.
Yeah, in other circumstances, of course, it is also important to make sure that we offer the appropriate thing. If we came across, let's say, in the depths of winter, someone who has no clothes to wear and who is on the brink of freezing to death, well, offering these people all sorts of niceties first would be rather useless. What they require is warm clothing. So if we find someone who's freezing, we'll give him something to wear so that he does not freeze anymore, etc. and so forth. What not to give is also important to know. If you'd meet a person with suicidal tendencies, someone who is thinking about nothing but putting his or her life to an end, well, to present such people with knives or ropes or some such, of course, would be entirely inappropriate. There can occasionally also be situations where giving, where acting in a generous way, is not all that easy. For instance, if you were to travel to India, if you were to go to Bodhgaya or to the famous pilgrimage spot, the charnel ground that is known as Sitavana or Silvatsal in Tibetan, as soon as you'd get out of your bus or taxi, you'd be surrounded by 100 or possibly even 200 beggar children, who all, each and every one of them, hope that you will give something to any particular one of them. Everybody is full of hope. However, if you were just to get out whatever you brought and give to one of these kids and then move on, a great commotion would start, and they would fight among each other, and they would try to take away from each other whatever they've received. And in this way, you might have given something, but you would have actually created a great lot of discord and fighting and possibly even pain among these children. In this way, it is also, in such a situation, it is necessary to first check out the situation and see what the actual deal is. These gangs, one can even call them, of beggar children, for the most part are rather well organized. They always have a leader who mostly is a somewhat older child, and he's often recognizable by carrying a stick upon himself with which he organizes the others in rather rough ways. And he's the one you should either give to, or he's the one, or she for that matter, in some other groups, whom you should address to call the entire assembly to order. And once a certain order, a certain packing order, so to speak, has been established, then you can freely give however much you have, whatever much you want. Sticking to the subject of practice of traveling to India, if you should have plans to travel to India, for the most part you would possibly also wish to visit the sacred spot or city of Bodhgaya. Bodhgaya is an extremely sacred spot for us Buddhists because not only the Buddha of our age, Buddha Shakyamuni, has achieved the awakening of full enlightenment at that spot, but also the three previous Buddhas of our age, which are known of the eon in which we find ourselves, which were known as the Buddhas Korajik, Setup, and Versung. These three Buddhas, just as the Buddha of our particular age, Shakyamuni, they have all achieved enlightenment or demonstrated the achievement of enlightenment at this particular spot of Bodhgaya. Therefore, this place for us Buddhists is the most sacred spot in the world of all the various sacred places they are. And that being the case, a great many different Buddhist groups continually congregate there for prayer festivals, for prayer gatherings, etc. As also do we Kagyus, year after year, under the leadership of His Holiness the Karmapa, and a great many of the other great Kagyu Lamas like Jalsab Rinpoche, Jamgon Rinpoche, etc. also attend these prayer meetings. Tenga Rinpoche himself has been there recently, and he also plans to go there again for the next Kagyu prayer festival known as the Kagyu Mönlam. And if you should have any plans to travel to India and to travel particularly to Bodhgaya, then this particular time during which the Kagyu Mönlam is being held, usually for the duration of 7 days, would be a particularly good time to choose to travel. And then Rinpoche added, if you should wish to practice generosity during these days, well then there will be a veritable ocean of beggars, so there is no lack of objects towards to whom to give. Now, if you were to join the next Kagyu Mönlam, which is a large prayer gathering of thousands of lamas and monks, you could join in the prayers which are being conducted there. In the last couple of years, His Holiness Karmapa has had translations prepared of these predominantly Tibetan prayers into English, into Chinese, into Korean. And when Rinpoche himself was in India last year, he met, among other people, among other translators, also Christoph Jobst and who else? Dorothea, who were working on the German translation, which isn't quite finished yet, but hopefully will be finished for the next Kagyu Mönlam. So there is good hope that eventually there will also be a German version, a German translation of all of these prayers. And you could then join in with this great assembly of the Sangha into these prayers for the benefit and welfare of all beings. And as Rinpoche mentioned before, you will naturally find a great number of beggars who also assemble at that on the fringes of this prayer festival in order to receive donations. Now, since there will be a great many beggars, you will not be able to give a whole lot to each and every one of them. But if you were to be able to give them only a single rupee or 2 rupees, that would indeed be very helpful for each and every one of them, including your own self, provided that you give with a thought of happiness, that you give freely, without any regrets, without any feeling of stinginess, without any idea, well, here I have 2, maybe I just give them 1. You should give with the greatest possible joy and with the greatest possible wish for the welfare of those towards whom you're giving. If you practice giving, if you practice generosity in such a way, then indeed great benefit for everybody concerned will come there. Rinpoche himself was in India in the presence of the Karmapa last year. He was apparently rather amused by the ins and outs of all various translators, among them Christoph, Jobst, Dorothea, and other people who occasionally, of course, as it is always the case with translation work, went to see the Lama, in this case His Holiness the Karmapa. And as the Karmapa, of course, as everybody knows, is very busy, he would ask them then, like, what do you want? And they'd ask, well, we have some questions, could we please go over them? And he'd nod and say, yeah, right, later, wait. And he'd gesture to some chairs where they then dutifully and meekly would sit down and wait. And wait and wait some more. Sometimes an hour, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes even 3. And apparently that spectacle was at times rather amusing. So far we've heard about generosity in regard to material objects, actual possessions of ours that we give away for the benefit and welfare of others. Now the next type, the second type of generosity, it is said, is that of giving the Dharma, teaching the Dharma to those who are in need of the Dharma. And there is a saying out of a sutra, we do not know exactly which one, in which it roughly says while giving the Dharma, your intention should be utterly immaculate. Thus, it has been said by all the Buddhas. Which means to say that if we give the Dharma, if we're able to give Dharma, which means to teach Dharma to a certain extent, if we're able to do so in the first place, we should do so free of any thought whatsoever of any benefit for ourselves. We should teach the Dharma solely for the welfare of those towards whom we do teach it. We should be free of any ideas that teaching the Dharma will make us very popular, or teaching the Dharma to others will possibly even earn us money or wealth or anything of that sort. So when teaching the Dharma, it should be done solely with the welfare of those who receive the Dharma from us in mind and nothing else whatsoever. Now, when teaching, when setting out to teach the Dharma, if that should become necessary, if others would ask us and there would be no one else around to do it, then we should make sure that we're able to teach the Dharma properly, that we're able to teach Dharma without errors. Unless we're able to do so, we should rather think again. Now, if you're able to do so, then of course it should be done with an attitude of having only the welfare of those who request the Dharma from us at heart. If we were to do so, then it is necessary to make sure that we have what it takes to do so. And then, of course, eventually we will find people who have an interest in the Buddhist Dharma, in the teachings of the Buddha, and who ask us, what is all of this Buddhism about? So, for the most part, all of us have been practicing the Dharma, have been studying the Dharma for a long time, so we are quite familiar with the Buddhist teachings. The first thing that we should then teach others is the ideas of the enlightened attitude of how to give rise to bodhicitta, teach them about loving kindness and compassion, and if there are those who have a greater interest to take this further, by all means also teach them the various ways of mind training as we have learned them. Again, it is said very clearly that whatever Dharma teaching activity we should concern ourselves with, we should always make sure that we do so with an utterly pure, with an immaculate motivation that should be only aiming at the welfare and benefit of the other person. Time is up, so if there are questions, please keep them very short.